Karen,
Yes.
after all of the interviews we've conducted since we started the show, I have to finally ask you the question that I've asked lots of our guests, but never had the opportunity to ask you.
Oh, boy.
You ready?
No.
Well, get ready, because here it comes. Do you believe in life after death?
Of course I believe in life after
Of
death.
course you do. Yes, of course. Well, if you can believe it, though, there are still so many people out there that are either unsure or simply don't believe that there's anything beyond this life that we are currently experiencing.
I believe it.
Well, this was the case with today's guest, but thanks to some extraordinary events and circumstances, everything completely changed for her. And now she believes she knows the truth about our life after this one.
Wonderful.
Now, what were these events that completely changed her mind? We'll dive into that and so much more on this episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is The Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And in today's main topic, we're once again diving into one of our favorite topics, life after death. Our guest is a former lecturer in law at Cambridge University who found herself suddenly bereaved about 4 years ago or so. At the time, she didn't really believe in life after death, but when she suddenly started to receive extraordinary signs and messages from beyond, she realized that her beloved husband was trying to show her the truth from beyond the veil. She's the author of What's Apps from Heaven, and we're thrilled to welcome Louise Hamlin to the show today. Louise, thank you so much for coming on The Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I am excited to dive into your story because it is a really fun story and one that may make others change their minds. But before we get into the actual story, I mentioned in your intro, you didn't really believe in life after death before your husband died. Is that right?
I was a lawyer, and my husband was a lawyer as well. He was a barrister, and we had very sort of, if you like, conventional thoughts, and we thought that death was the end of all. We didn't totally close our minds to it, and when my husband was dying, we discussed the possibility of whether there was life after death or not. And he said, well, I really don't think there is, and I'm not scared of death because I think it's going to be nothing at all. If by any chance there is a life after death, well, I think I've been a good enough person for that to be okay. And I felt the same. I hadn't totally closed my mind to it because, you can't prove that there isn't life after death. But on the other hand, I was very skeptical. I was a conventional lawyer, if you like, and a land lawyer at that. So when he died, I was totally and utterly devastated, and I couldn't bear to think that that was the end of Patrick. But on the other hand, I thought it was very unlikely that there was going to be life after death for him or for anybody. And it was then the things that happened that, made me change my mind.
Right. And we'll get into all those things that happened. But before we do, did you and Patrick, your husband, did you make a play? Like, did you say, hey, if I pass on, I'll try to send you a message from the beyond if there is something or anything like that? Or was it just...
No, funnily enough, we didn't. And I don't think it occurred to us to do that. I guess because we didn't really think that there was life after death. The only things we said to each other were, well, how much we loved each other and how fabulous our marriage had been, and, what a bummer it was that he suddenly got cancer and died.
Well, it just sounds like what I like about it. At the root of this story, it's a love story. You have this wonderful relationship, and I love that.
Oh, totally. I mean, it was a second marriage for both of us. And we just met in 2005. And neither of us imagined that we were going to find love again.
Mm.
And we did. And it was so wonderful. And yeah, they were very, very happy years. They really were.
And it sounds like that love transcended or is still transcending here to the spiritual realm.
Oh, I mean, I don't think that love ends when somebody dies. No. And I still love Patrick with all my heart. And I feel loved by him as well. And yeah, no, love certainly survives death.
Oh, well, that we're gonna dive into how you feel you're still being loved in a second. But tell us about the passing. I know it was a very traumatic event for you. We just talked about how wonderfully in love you both were. You weren't together for very long. You had just met 2005, you said, but your connection was so strong that when he passed, the sadness, the grief was incredible. So then, what happened after he died?
Well, I mean, I was just completely and utterly devastated. And I couldn't really function. I just sort of sat like a zombie. And very luckily, the children and friends and neighbours were fabulous, because I couldn't really do anything at all. I was so shocked and distraught. And then, actually, just 5 days after he died, I had a WhatsApp. And your listeners might not know what WhatsApp is. It's a sort of texting app. And it's very easy to send photographs with it as well. And in the UK, it's ubiquitous. Everybody uses it all the time. I don't think it's quite so common in the States.
Yeah, no, we do know about it because Karen has family in Ecuador and they use it as well. So everywhere except it's like football, right? It's like soccer. Everybody in
Yes.
the world plays it except us, really, or cheers on for it. Where everybody in the world uses WhatsApp except for us. I think it's starting to hit in this area, but it's really a text messaging. But like you said, you can send videos and phone calls and photographs and all kinds of things. And it's encoded end-to-end, so it's very private. So it's a really great app. So a lot of people use it. So sorry to interrupt, but yes.
Yes, no, but everybody in the UK uses it. And you can make WhatsApp groups. So, I have a family group with the children, and we can all post on that, and then the rest of the group sees the post and sees the photograph and what have you. And most people have that. And so there are always groups showing grandchildren doing this and grandchildren doing that. You get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so just 5 days after Patrick had died, I had a WhatsApp from a friend who is also a bit psychic. And she said, in this WhatsApp, Louise, I don't know whether I should tell you this or not, but I'm going to. This morning, I was sort of thinking about Patrick, and I asked him to send me a sign if he was okay. And I asked him to send me a flame sometime today. Not in a fireplace, but otherwise a flame. And she said, and then I went about my day, and to be frank, I'd rather forgotten about it. And this evening, when I went to draw my curtains, I looked out of the sitting room window, and from the neighbouring garden, I could see a very tall, thin flame. And I rushed and got my phone and took a photograph of it, and here's a photograph of it. And she said, and then it died down quite shortly thereafter. And she sent me this photograph of this tall, thin flame. And you couldn't see the ground, so you couldn't see what was actually causing it because there was a fence in the way. But anyway, and my friend Jenny, she said, I'm sure that this was a sign from Patrick saying that he's okay. And, I read this and I looked at the flame, and Jenny also said, I don't believe in coincidences. Well, of course, at that time, I did believe in coincidences. And so, I thought, well, it'd be jolly nice to think that it was Patrick, but I suspect it was a coincidence. It was a strange flame, but I suspect it was a coincidence.
I think it's wonderful now how our loved ones are reaching us through technology. I had a similar situation about a year ago. My best friend passed, and it was awful. And I remember a couple of days later just kind of saying, hey, I need to sign, that you're still around, that you're okay. Send me a magnolia. And then I kind of forgot about it. Well, the next morning I wake up and my mother, we're in Virginia, she's in Florida, so it's a few states away, texted me and said, I wanted to send you this picture. I don't know why I was compelled to send it to you, but I was taking a walk today and I saw this, and it's a picture she took of a big, beautiful magnolia. And it was just so out of the blue. So I'm like, oh, I totally resonate with your story.
And I have to ask, because you mentioned, you did not believe in life after death. We've talked about that several times now, but a friend who is psychic was not something you took in. I mean, you took it very much in stride that she was psychic and sending us these messages.
Well, I do. I am very fond of her, and she's a bit of a healer. And so, I sort of understand that, but I wasn't convinced by this. I hoped it was true, but I wasn't convinced. And then I actually decided that I would ask for something and see. And so I asked Patrick if I could have some snowdrops. And he died in February. And so snowdrops were in season. They're little white flowers. And I thought I'd give him some time. So I asked if I could have be given some snowdrops within the next 3 days. So, I thought, right, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And the next day, my best friend came to stay with me. And at the end of the third day, I said to her, oh, I'm really disappointed because I'd actually asked if Patrick could send me some snowdrops within the next 3 days, and the 3 days are up and he hasn't sent me anything. I guess that his spirit hasn't survived. And and my best friend, she put her head in her hands and said, oh, I can't believe it. And on her way to come and stay with me, she'd stopped off at a farmer's market, and there had been a stall selling snowdrops. And she said, I had this really strong urge to buy you some snowdrops. It was such a strong urge. And I resisted it because I kept on thinking, but that's stupid because Louise is going to have masses of flowers in the house. She won't need any more. And so,
wow.
And so that's the sign that didn't work. But on the other hand, I could imagine Patrick sort of trying to say to my friend Anna, buy the snowdrops, for goodness sake, just buy some snowdrops for Louise.
Right. Oh.
Wow.
But then things started happening, and I asked then for a feather on a train. And the next day I was catching a train, and I got on the train and it was quite busy. I saw a couple of seats that were vacant at the far end of the carriage. So I went and very quickly sat on the seat before anybody else could. And I glanced down at the seat next to me, and there was a feather on the seat. And there was nothing feathery at all about the carriage. So,
wow.
So I thought, oh, yeah, I have got my feather.
Yes.
I would say so.
That's so random on a train. What are the odds of that? That's not.
Yeah. But of course, it wasn't enough to convince me, but I was pleased.
Sure. Yeah, even if it was a coincidence, it's a very happy coincidence anyway. So
yeah.
So then, Karen, you mentioned how amazing it is that our dear loved ones are using technologies to reach out to us from the afterlife. that kind of ushers us into the next phase of the conversation, because WhatsApp suddenly started becoming a very big thing with your departed husband. And we need to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some very interesting messages you received by electronic means that you don't want to miss. We'll be right back right after these messages. And we're back at Skeptic Metaphysicians. We are speaking to Louise Hamlin, who was a skeptic for a long time. Life after death was something that she did not really get behind for very obvious reasons. She had been an attorney, and because of that, the pragmatic mindset did not allow her to believe that there was such a thing as life after death. However, after her husband passed away, that all changed. And we've talked about certain signs that she was being sent by him from the other side. But now this is where it starts to get really interesting, because electronic means is not something you would think of that our departed loved ones would have access to in the afterlife. However, this does not seem to be the case, right? You did receive some pretty interesting messages via WhatsApp messaging app. Can you tell us about those?
Oh, yes, certainly. Well, it all started when I was out of the house and I returned to the house, and the house had been locked and empty. No radio had been on. So the house had been totally silent. And I'd left my phone in the kitchen, and I looked at it, and it had opened itself up into WhatsApp, and it had then gone to the WhatsApp bit where it would send a message to Maria. And the message box was then absolutely full of random words. And it went on and on and on. And I could not understand how that had happened. It seemed impossible. I was about to just delete it all. And then I thought, oh, actually, I'll send it to Maria and ask her what she thinks. And Maria was a medium whom I had consulted. And when I'd seen her, she very clearly sort of had contact with Patrick. And in fact, Patrick had sent her orbs and lights and things. Patrick seemed to communicate with her very easily. So anyway, I sent the WhatsApp to her. All I did was just press send. And then I sent her another message saying, hey, I found this. No idea how it got there. So she replied, well, I don't know what it is, but there we go. The next day, I got a message from her, and she said the same thing happened to me. My phone opened up by itself, ready to send a message to you, and the message box was full, and here it is. And there was a shorter message with some random words, but amongst the random words were words that make sense. And 3 times it said, darling, it's me. and
Wow, I'm getting goosebumps up and down.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I know.
I'm gonna cry.
And I sort of totally trusted Maria. But of course, there was a tiny little bit of me which thought, well, could she have made this up?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And the next day, I think it was, sent me another message. And she said, I found this. And actually, what was quite interesting was, on that message, it started by saying 180219. And that actually was the date that Patrick had died, because in the UK, we say the month in the middle. We go day, month. But of course, Maria didn't know that. And there was no reason how she could have known that, really. And I replied to Maria saying, oh, this is odd. What do you think these numbers are? And this was sort of me slightly testing her. Mm-hmm. And she said, I've no idea. I wonder if it's a barcode or something. So I thought, yeah, that's that sort of suggests that she hasn't done it. And quite a lot of wonderful messages followed and things that I could make sense of, but I don't know that anybody else particularly would. And I was very excited by it all and very hopeful, but it wasn't until the August that something happened that I absolutely and totally knew for sure that Patrick was using WhatsApp. I was walking my dog on Tooting Common in London, and I had the phone in my pocket. I got back to my son's house where I was staying, and I pulled the phone out of my pocket, and it said, "You have created 2 new WhatsApp groups, one consisting of you and Patrick, one consisting of you, Patrick's daughter, and Patrick." And they were called Hamlins and Hamlin Family. And I stared at this phone, and I knew that I had not created these groups. And it said I'd created them at 6 minutes past 11 in the morning. And I knew that at 6 minutes past 11, I'd been walking on the common with the phone in my pocket. And it's quite complicated to create a group. I mean, it couldn't have happened just with pocket jiggling or jiggling the phone.
Especially named with those particular names.
And the appropriate names and everything. I was gobsmacked. I thought, it must be Patrick. It must be. I mean, I showed it to my son and his wife. And my son is also a lawyer. And, he's sort of quite black and white. And he said, well, there must be some explanation. Maybe somebody hacked your phone. I said, well, I had the phone in my pocket. Anyway, he spent a lot of time investigating to see whether there was any way anybody could somehow have hacked my phone and created these WhatsApp groups on my phone. And in the end, he said, do you know what, Mum? It would be impossible for anybody to have done it. And he said, it must have been Patrick. I said, yeah. And all these WhatsApps that I'd been getting, they're from Patrick. Wow. And I was thrilled.
Of course.
I was thrilled and delighted.
Yeah. Extraordinary story, extraordinary signs that even the biggest skeptic has to kind of take a look at and go, yeah, yeah, that's incredible. So then that obviously cemented the thought in your mind that there is indeed life after death.
Yeah.
Without
absolutely.
a shadow of a doubt.
Do you know, I don't believe in life after death. I know now that our spirits survive.
Right.
And that's a lovely knowing to have.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any messages on either of those groups?
No, but I carried on having a lot of messages sort of via Maria. Maria kept on saying, oh, I've just found this on my phone. And I haven't had a WhatsApp for about a year now, but I had them for about 2 years. And they were lovely, lovely messages.
Yeah, of course. And then, so those messages weren't the only ones that you got. You got a particular message that revolved around a playing card, right?
Yeah, no, this was extraordinary because this also had witnesses.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah. So lots of things were happening. But then one day I was playing bridge with 3 friends. And I don't know if you know how to play bridge or not, but you have 2 packs of cards and you use them alternatively. So we played the first hand with the red cards. Then we played the second hand with the blue cards. And then it was time to use the red cards again. And my friend dealt, and she was a card short. So we assumed she'd misdealt and we all counted our cards. But no, nobody had an extra card. So we sort of looked to see if the card had fallen on the floor. No. And we knew that the pack had been complete because we'd already played one hand with it.
You just played, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So we started to search for this card. And we were searching more and more sort of frantically, thinking this is extraordinary. The card can't have just disappeared. we were wrong thinking that was the case. Anyway, my friends sort of knew that I'd had these signs from Patrick. And eventually, when we just could not find the card anywhere, somebody said, I bet it's a heart. I bet it's from Patrick. He's taken the card and it's a heart. So we looked to see what the card was. And it was the 9 of hearts. And so they said, does that mean something to you? And I said, well, no, that seems perfectly sort of random. Yeah. I mean, the Queen of Hearts, yes. Or the Ace of Hearts. But the 9 of Hearts, no, it didn't mean anything at all. Anyway, we had to go and get another pack of cards to continue the game. And a couple of days later, I told a friend this story because, I mean, we were all gobsmacked by it, the way that the card had literally disappeared. And this friend happens to do tarot, which I don't do. And Patrick never did either. And the friend said, oh, Louise, the 9 of Hearts is the equivalent of the 9 of Cups. And that's the most wonderful, loving card in the whole tarot pack. And it means total, undying love.
What?
And,
Oh my gosh.
And isn't it extraordinary that Patrick somehow had learned that in the afterlife?
That is amazing. And there's something that I have to tell you now, and Will, this might catch you surprised too. And I know you've kind of I've been looking away, but I have next to me on the right-hand side, there's a computer and it changes the screensaver. And when you were telling us your story about the flowers, I kept thinking to myself, I really wish the friend would have bought those flowers. On the screensaver, a bunch of white flowers appeared. And I noticed that, and I'm like, I don't know what kind of flowers those are. So I've actually been looking on my phone to see what snowdrops look like. I mean, I can't say that they're snowdrops, but they look just like them. The screensaver that appeared while we were having this conversation.
So Patrick is...
So I just want to share that with you because...
Patrick is reaching out to you right now through our show to confirm everything that we're talking about. That is incredible.
Isn't that incredible? I'm like, what? I don't know what kind of flowers those are. And I'm like, I mean, it looks just like them.
Oh, that's so lovely. Oh, I'm so delighted. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
I do know that he's still around, you know.
Well, and I was going to ask, have you continued to get messages through the years or have they subsided?
They have subsided, but whenever I go and visit Jenny, the psychic friend who saw the flame and had other signs as well, which she told me all about. She actually is a healer and she gives me healing, which is lovely. But whenever I arrive, she says, oh, Patrick's arrived already. Or after a few minutes, she'll say, oh, Patrick's come. You know, without fail, Patrick appears while I'm with her, which is very nice.
Well, it seems that Patrick is here with us now.
He wants you to know he's still here.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's amazing. I have to tell them.
Yeah, but typical of the man.
Yeah. Now it's just some mountains. So it just happened to flash those flowers at that time when we were talking about it.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, then you wrote the book, What's Apps from Heaven. What could someone expect to find in the book if they purchase it?
And the lower title is Bereavement in the 21st Century. So I write about what happened, and I also visited mediums, and I write about that, and some were more successful than others, some were extraordinary. And I also write about how I navigated my bereavement for the first 2 years. So I hope that it's a book that will give consolation to people who are bereaved and will also be sort of helpful to people who just don't know how they're going to carry on. Because I didn't know how I'd carry on. And so I say, you know, I write about things that I found helped me and things that didn't help me. And also there's a lot more detail about signs and things. I wrote the book that I would have liked to read when I was first bereaved.
Right. Right. Well, we are going to add a direct link to your website where people can buy your book in our show notes. All you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to Louise's episode page, and you will find the link directly laid in there for you. So it makes it super easy to access. Louise, this story is probably easily one of my absolute favorites that we've had on the show. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about it, sharing your story and your experiences with us and our audience.
Sharing the power of love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed talking to you both.
Oh, and we have with you as well. And now I'm going to go see if I can find some snowdrops. So. Thank you again, and we'll see you again soon.
Lovely. Okay. Bye-bye.
And a huge thank you to you. Yes, you, the person that hit play on this episode. We know that there are tons of options out there, and having you decide to come along on our journey of discovery with us is an absolute honor for us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. If you did and you feel called to give back, we invite you to visit our website at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can donate to the show or subscribe as a member through our Buy Me a Coffee campaign. Your support will go a long way towards allowing Karen and I to bring you these wonderful conversations and teachings in more and more robust ways. Of course, if contributing to the show content is what you're looking for instead, well, we'd love for you to contribute by sending us a voicemail or an email from our website, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting platform that supports them. Karen and I love hearing from those that are moved to message us. It truly does fuel our passion. You are the reason we do this show, and knowing what you like and don't like help us craft the very best show we can so that we can help raise the vibration of the planet together. Now, if you know someone who would benefit from hearing the message we're sharing on the show, do them and us a favor and share the show with them. It will help get the word out about us, and it might just change someone's life for the better. Well, that's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.